Oh, really? I heard you bought a house. If that's the case, I'd love to move in with you. My mother-in-law's unexpected words came through the phone, catching me off guard. It was absurd. Where did this even come from? She must have found out about our new home from my husband. In the background, I could hear my sister-in-law laughing, as if she thought her amusement would go unnoticed. I had no desire to live with my mother-in-law or anyone else from that side of the family. I thought Joe felt the same way, but now that they knew about the house, were they assuming they'd be living with us? Worse, could Joe have given them that idea? The thought made me uneasy. If this was some kind of manipulation, I wasn't about to fall for it. If they wanted to play games, I'd turn the tables on them instead. Memories of past hardships flooded my mind, and I silently vowed I wouldn't let them walk all over me. My name is Kate Thompson. I'm 30 years old and work as an ordinary employee at a major financial firm. I married Joe 3 years ago. We don't have children yet, but that's by choice, a decision we made carefully. Joe and I have dedicated ourselves to our careers, working tirelessly to advance. We agreed that once our professional lives stabilized, we'd build our own home and create a secure environment for our future family. Until then, children were on hold. It was a mutual decision, one we took seriously. Now, as we finally moved toward that dream, I found myself reflecting on all the struggles I'd endured. Then came a turning point. After months of effort, I successfully completed a major project at work, earning a well-deserved promotion. My salary had always been enough, but now, with the added financial boost, life became even more comfortable. Joe, on the other hand, hadn't been promoted yet, but his salary had increased significantly due to his years of service. With both our incomes rising, I knew the time had come to take the next step. One evening, I brought it up. Joe, I think it's time we consider getting our own place. We've both had stable incomes for over a year now. What do you think? He looked surprised but excited. Already? I've been thinking about it too, but since I haven't been promoted yet, I felt hesitant to bring it up. That doesn't matter, I reassured him. We both contribute financially. Besides, I was thinking of putting the house in my name. Joe blinked, then grinned. Really? Well, you do earn more now. If you're okay with that, let's do it. Great! Let's check out some model homes this weekend. Sounds like a plan. We shouldn't miss this opportunity. Moments like these reminded me why I married Joe. We shared the same values and made decisions together as equals. The following week, we set up viewings for model homes, walking through different layouts. We got inspired, sketching simple floor plans in our free time and researching designs online. A construction company even advised us to create a clear vision rather than relying entirely on them. So, we started shaping our dream home. Of course, neither of us had expertise in architecture, so it took time and effort. We worked on it whenever we could, taking breaks in between. Then, the doorbell rang. Expecting a delivery, I opened the door, only to find my mother-in-law standing there unannounced. Huh, Mom? What are you doing here? She had a habit of showing up without notice, but this was still unexpected. Without a word, she stepped inside, took off her shoes, and called out loudly, "I'm here, Joe." Joe, hearing his mother's voice, looked startled. "Mom? What's going on?" She gave him a knowing look. "I told Kate over the phone a little while ago, but it seems she didn't mention it to you." Joe glanced at me. "Oh, maybe she forgot." "Seems like it," my mother-in-law scoffed. "Kate, you're still young, but you have such a terrible memory." I clenched my jaw. "That's not true, Mom." Joe defended me. "Kate's been incredibly busy with work, and..." I barely listened. My mind was already racing, piecing together her real motive for being here. "She takes care of the household. Her mind is always occupied with responsibilities. Joe's words were firm, standing up for me. His mother, however, responded with a saccharine smile. You're such a kind boy, Joe. If your father were still alive, he wouldn't have tolerated such disrespect. But don't worry, I truly respect Kate from the bottom of my heart. Joe didn't seem convinced. So, Mom, what brings you here today? At his question, she grinned with satisfaction. Slowly, she pulled a travel brochure from her bag, flipping to a page marked with a bright post-it note and laying it on the table. Joe, I've always wanted to see Niagara Falls. Won't you take me? Her sudden, excited request left us both speechless. Joe and I stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. But she wasn't finished. Undeterred by our silence, she pressed on, her voice dripping with expectation. Come on, Joe, don't you agree? Think of it as a way to show filial piety. Wait, Mom, Joe hesitated, clearly caught off guard. You can't just spring a trip on me like this. Oh, don't worry, you can come too, Kate, she added, as if it was some grand gesture. Actually, I was planning to go with Claire, but if Joe comes along, we could make it a family trip. Claire, Joe's sister. What? Mom, I can't just take time off work. And why would I pay for a trip for you and Claire? Why not? She said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Spending money on family is a wonderful thing, right, Kate? Suddenly, she turned to me, seeking my agreement. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. Spending your own money on family isn't bad, but forcing someone else to do it is a different story. Her eyes narrowed. Are you accusing me of demanding money from Joe? I didn't say it like that, but from the way you're talking, it does seem like you expect him to pay for everything. Her expression twisted into mock hurt. Kate, that's terrible. I had no such intention, and now you're making me look like the bad guy in front of Joe. I'm absolutely shocked. That's not what I meant. Oh, please, Kate, don't bother making excuses. Why are you so heartless? You don't like me, do you? Her gaze turned cold, sharp as ice. It always went this way. She'd show up, find some excuse to demand money, and then play the victim when I refused. In her mind, spending money on family was just a fancy way of justifying what was essentially extortion. Joe had told me before, his mother and sister had changed after his father passed away. Back then, his strict father had controlled the finances, keeping everything in check. But after his death, there was no one to stop them. They had even burned through the life insurance money without a second thought. Claire, working only part-time, barely had an income, so their financial struggles never seemed to end. That was why his mother constantly visited us, spinning excuses like life is tough or I deserve a little trip to pressure Joe into paying up. Before we got married, Joe had given in to her demands more often than not. His mother had raised him, after all, and guilt had bound him to her whims. But since marrying me, he had started to see the truth. More importantly, he had started to push back. And today was no different. Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you can talk badly about Kate, Joe said firmly. His mother's eyes widened. Joe, are you taking her side? What are you talking about? You're the one in the wrong here. She let out a dramatic gasp. Unbelievable. Kate must have poisoned your mind against me. You used to be such a kind boy before you married her. Joe exhaled sharply. This has nothing to do with Kate. I'm saying this because it's what I think. For once, my mother-in-law was at a loss for words. She stared at Joe, biting her lower lip in frustration. Fine, she finally muttered before storming out. Joe turned to me with an apologetic look. Kate, I'm sorry. I know this always puts you in a tough spot. I shook my head. It's okay. You stood up for us this time. His expression softened. Once we move into our new house, we'll be farther away from them. Maybe it's time to cut ties. Relief washed over me. If you're okay with that, Joe, then I'm grateful. Our new home was quite a distance from our current apartment, chosen for both convenience and, well, strategic reasons. Right now, we live just 5 train stops from Joe's family home. The new house, however, would be 3 times farther, requiring multiple transfers. The station's layout was complicated enough that, without an address, finding it would be nearly impossible. It was the perfect chance to sever ties cleanly. A few weeks later, construction on our $500,000 dream home was complete. Between work and packing, we barely had time to rest, but the excitement of moving kept us going. Then, just a few days before the move, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Sighing, I put it on speaker. "Hello?" Her voice was unusually high-pitched, almost too cheerful. "Kate, when are you moving? You bought a house, didn't you?" I already knew where this was going. The phone call started off normal until my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "I want to live with you." I froze. She must have heard about our new home from Joe. In the background, I caught the sound of Claire, my sister-in-law, chuckling. "That's perfect. Mom, we can make Kate do all the work for us every day." Great idea. Did they really think I couldn't hear them? Their plan was obvious. They wanted to leech off our move and use me for their convenience. I had no intention of letting that happen. The thought that Joe might have encouraged this sent a chill down my spine. Had he given them the idea? If he told them about our new house, did they assume we'd all live together? No matter what, I wasn't going to let them have their way. Keeping my voice even, I told them the date of our move. "Oh, good," my mother-in-law said. "We'll come to your apartment in the afternoon. Take us with you in your car, and arrange for movers to handle our stuff too." Then she hung up, just like that. No question, no request, just an order. Too bad for them, I had no intention of complying. I turned to find Joe already standing behind me. "You heard that?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, his expression darkening. "I just came to tell you we should take a break." "But, was that Mom on the phone just now?" I nodded. "Joe, why did your mother know about our new house?" He sighed. "It's not what you think. She came over last time and must have seen the floor plan. Since then, she's been hounding me about it." I tried to brush it off, but... "Kate, I'm really sorry." I searched his face. "So, you don't actually want to live with her, right?" "Of course not." His jaw tightened, and after hearing that call, I'm thinking it's time to cut ties completely. His voice carried more anger than I'd ever heard before. For the first time, I realized Joe wasn't on their side. He was on mine. That meant there was no problem at all. In fact, it only made me more determined. I was going to settle this once and for all. By the time Joe and I finished moving our things into our new home, it was already past 1 p.m. Checking my phone, I found dozens of missed calls from my mother-in-law. "She called me too," Joe muttered, looking exhausted. As if on cue, the phone rang again. I put it on speaker. "Hello? Kate, where are you? I told you we'd be at your apartment in the afternoon. We've been waiting for the movers, but not a single truck has shown up, so I had to come to your apartment myself." "Oh," I said, feigning innocence. "That's unfortunate." You knew?" "What? That wasn't the deal. Where's your new house?" I smirked. "You really think I'd tell you?" A stunned silence. Then, what do you mean? It's Joe's decision, not yours. At least tell me where the house is." I chuckled. And how exactly do you plan on getting here without the address? This house is in my name, I continued. I decide who lives here. If you show up uninvited, that's trespassing, and I'll press charges. Trespassing? She spluttered. How dare you say that to family? Joe, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was cold. Family? My real family, my father, is already gone. His mother gasped. What are you saying, Joe? I'm saying I've had enough. You've used me my whole life. But I'm done. From now on, my only family is Kate. He exhaled sharply. I don't want anything to do with you two anymore. Wait, Joe, don't say that. Don't call us again. And with that, he hung up. Swiftly, he blocked her number. Joe met my gaze. You okay with this? I smiled. Are you? Yeah. He stretched, as if shaking off a heavy weight. I should have done this a long time ago. And just like that, we were free. Cutting them off meant they had to fend for themselves. Joe stopped supporting them, forcing them to change their lifestyle. My sister-in-law's part-time wages weren't enough, and my mother-in-law, who had never worked a day in her life, was forced into a job she hated. Meanwhile, Joe and I finally had peace. No sudden visits, no unwanted demands, just us, living our lives the way we wanted. Looking at Joe, I felt nothing but gratitude. No matter what challenges came our way, I knew one thing for certain. We would always stand together.